The chandeliers shimmered like frozen stars above the ballroom. A string quartet played softly near the grand staircase. Everything smelled of old money and roses. Adrian Cole's engagement party was less a celebration and more a coronation. A public proclamation that the tech mogul had it all: wealth, power, and now, a beautiful fiancée from the right family. Laughter swirled around crystal glasses filled with champagne. The guests were who's who of Silicon Valley royalty. The bride-to-be, Elena Prescott, glided across the marble floor in a couture gown, radiating perfection. Adrian stood beside her, one hand on her waist, the other raising a toast. Then the doors opened. They didn't burst open. No dramatic crash. No storm. Just a slow, deliberate push. The music faltered. Eyes turned. And there she was, a woman in a crimson dress that bled against the pale marble like spilled wine. The fabric clung to her body, not with seduction, but with purpose. Her head was held high, eyes steady. She didn't flinch, but it wasn't just her. Feeling touched by this story? Like, share, and comment your location. We'd love to hear from you. 4 children followed her, 2 boys, 2 girls, dressed simply, holding hands. They walked like a unit, close behind her, like they knew this wasn't a place made for them. Adrian froze. His champagne glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. The sound pierced the tension in the room like a gunshot. "Is that?" someone whispered. Elena turned to Adrian. "Who is she?" Adrian didn't answer. Isla Morgan kept walking. The red dress swayed around her legs like smoke. Guests parted. Silence grew thick. Only the tap of her heels and the soft shuffle of little feet could be heard. She stopped at the edge of the platform, where the microphone from Adrian's toast still stood. Then, she looked at him. Right at him. The man who once told her he'd build a life with her. The man who disappeared without a word. "Congratulations," she said, voice calm. "From me and your 4 children." The silence shattered. A collective gasp. Guests looked from Isla to the children to Adrian. A photographer dropped his camera. Elena's hand slipped from Adrian's arm like dead weight. Adrian's lips parted, but no words came. He blinked twice. His eyes darted to the children, then back to Isla, then to Elena. "This is some kind of joke," Elena said, half laughing. "Adrian, say something." Isla turned to her. "No joke. I'm sorry you had to find out like this, but I suppose I wasn't invited." Elena stepped back like she'd been slapped. Adrian finally moved, stumbling forward. "Isla, what the hell are you doing?" "I'm giving you a gift," Isla replied. 4 of them. He glanced at the children. Their faces mirrored fragments of his own. The sharp cheekbones, the chestnut eyes. The youngest girl clung to Isla's dress and peeked from behind her, thumb in mouth. "Not here," Adrian hissed. "This is not the place." "Oh," Isla smiled. "But you chose the venue. And you chose to forget." "I didn't." Security began to stir at the edges, unsure. Isla leaned slightly toward the microphone again. "Would you like me to say their names? Should I introduce them to your guests?" "Stop it," Adrian said, voice rising. "You don't belong here." "No," she said, locking eyes with him. "You don't." A hush followed, heavier than before. The children looked up at their mother, waiting. Isla gently reached down, brushing back a curl from her eldest daughter's forehead. "I'm not here to ruin your party, Adrian," she said. It was already a lie. Gasps followed. Someone tried to lead Elena away, but she stood still, staring at the children. "Is this true?" Elena asked quietly. "Adrian, answer me." He didn't. That was answer enough. That Isla's voice softened, but carried across the stunned crowd. "I gave birth to your children alone. Raised them without a dollar from you. You cut me off, changed numbers, disappeared. Now you're posing as a family man. But they're your family too." One of the boys, maybe 7, stepped closer to Adrian. "Are you our dad?" Adrian opened his mouth, but Isla stepped in. "You don't have to answer, Adrian. We'll do that in court." A collective intake of breath. Elena's face crumbled. Her mother, Senator Prescott, stormed forward. "You're uninvited. Leave, or we'll have you escorted out." Isla met her glare with elegance. "I'm sure the press outside would love a photo." Senator Prescott blanched. Isla crouched down to her children, speaking softly. "We're leaving now. You did good, babies." As they turned, whispers erupted. Cell phones lit up. Photos taken. Videos uploaded. A headline was already being written. "Billionaire's engagement implodes as secret family arrives in red." Adrian stood motionless, sweat beading at his temples. Elena backed away, tears in her eyes, rage in her voice. You said you never had children. I thought she. I thought she got rid of them. Adrian mumbled. She didn't. Elena looked at him like he was a stranger. She raised them. Alone. Isla, at the ballroom doors now, turned once more to glance back, not at Adrian, not at Elena, but at the world behind them. A world that erased her, underestimated her, forgot her. Not anymore. She pushed open the doors, and the red dress disappeared into the night, followed by four quiet shadows, walking hand in hand. And behind them, the kingdom began to crumble. 6 years earlier, the convention center buzzed with fluorescent lights and inflated egos. Tech entrepreneurs pitched apps designed to change the world, or at least look good on VC decks. Islam moved quietly through the crowd, press badge swinging, recorder in hand, notebook clutched tight. Journalism wasn't glamorous. Not at her level. Freelancing for pennies, sleeping in hostels, surviving on gas station coffee and self-doubt. But her questions were sharp. Her instincts sharper. Adrian Cole, a voice said behind her. Founder of Synapse AI. That's who you want. She turned. And there he was, leaning against a booth that looked more expensive than her entire college tuition. White button down, sleeves rolled up, hair tousled like it was perfectly accidental. His smile wasn't rehearsed. It was dangerous. The kind that made you forget your questions. You're Isla Morgan, right? He said. She blinked. How do you? I read your piece on the drone scandal last month. Brutal. Smart. She hid her surprise with a quick smirk. That article got me death threats. That means you hit the nerve, he replied. Truth always does. They sat at the edge of the conference cafe, away from the buzz. He spoke like someone used to commanding a room, but never needed to raise his voice. She was skeptical at first. She'd met dozens like him. Men who built empires on charm and disappeared when you scratched the surface. But Adrian? He remembered small details. Laughed at her sarcasm. He wasn't trying to sell her anything. Not yet. They met again the next day. And the next. After hours turned into rooftop drinks. Interviews turned into long walks through Silicon Valley's sterile twilight. Then came the night he invited her to a dinner, not with investors, but with his sister. Isla hesitated, then said yes. I don't usually mix work and Adrian trailed off. Fun, Isla offered. Feeling. He corrected. She didn't expect to fall in love. Not with someone like him. But she did die in his arms. She found stillness. In his voice, ambition that didn't scare her. He spoke about changing systems, not just markets. She let herself believe it. Let herself hope. When he held her, she imagined the future, not glamorous, but grounded. She'd still write. He'd still build. They'd challenge each other, raise a family, live honestly. She let herself believe she was seen. And then, she missed her period. It was quiet at first. Just a feeling. Then nausea. Then the test. Then 5 more. Positive. She sat on the floor of her one-bedroom apartment, surrounded by unpaid bills and blinking notifications. She stared at the test strip and said his name out loud. Adrian. She texted him. Need to talk. It's important. No reply. She emailed. Called. Left a voicemail. A day passed. Then 2. She wasn't panicking yet. He was probably busy. Flying. Pitching. Building something new. But by day 5, her messages turned into pleading. Please. I'm scared. Then the number disconnected. The email bounced back. His social media vanished. Gone, like he'd never existed. She thought it was a mistake. Thought maybe his phone was stolen. Maybe he was in trouble. But the days became weeks. And Isla understood. He didn't want her anymore. He didn't want the baby. She sat on her bathroom floor, knees against her chest, holding the test in one hand and her stomach in the other. Her tears didn't come all at once. They arrived slowly, like rain soaking through drywall. Quiet, invisible at first, until everything began to rot. At her first ultrasound, the technician smiled gently. Big news, she said. You're having quadruplets. Isla laughed, not a happy laugh. A desperate, hollow sound that scared even her. 4, she whispered. The technician nodded. They're strong. You're lucky. She didn't feel lucky. She felt punished. She called a lawyer. Asked what her options were. They said tracking Adrian down would be costly, and paternity cases were messy. She didn't have the money. Or the energy. And no one believed her anyway. She tried reaching his sister. The number was dead. Adrian had erased her like a typo. Pregnant and alone, Islam moved back into her childhood home, a one-story fixer-upper her mother left behind. The walls were cracked. The heater didn't work, but at least it had silence. During the nights, when her back hurt and her mind wouldn't quiet, she wrote him letters. She never mailed them. Dear Adrian, today I felt all four kick at once. Like a war inside me. You should have been here. You should have felt it. Dear Adrian, I'm scared, not of being a mother, but of them asking who their father is. Dear Adrian, why did you disappear? Those letters piled up in a shoebox under her bed. The months passed. Her belly grew heavy. So did the silence. When she gave birth, no one held her hand. No one waited outside the delivery room. No one took a photo, just her. And four tiny lives that blinked up at her like the world hadn't broken yet. Ava, Eli, Grace, Noah. She named them alone. She whispered promises to each of them in the hospital room. She didn't promise luxury, only truth, only love, and she kept that promise, even when the world didn't. The house always smelled faintly of applesauce and formula. The walls bore tiny handprints in peanut butter and blue marker. The television played lullabies on a loop, and Islam Morgan rarely slept more than 3 hours in a row. Her life, once filled with headlines and interviews, had narrowed to diapers, bottles, and whispers of four small, warm bodies curled against her chest. And still, every night, she wrote, Dear Adrian. She whispered, pressing pen to paper as the children breathed softly in the next room. Today Grace said her first word. It wasn't mama or dada. It was light. Maybe because I say it to her every time I lift the blinds. I wish you could have seen her face when the sun hit her eyes. She paused, crossed out the last sentence, rewrote it. I wish you had wanted to. She folded the letter carefully, slid it into a cheap white envelope, and tucked it into the worn shoebox under her bed. It joined dozens of others, some long, some only a few sentences, each stamped with a date, but never a stamp. She had written one after Ava's fever hit 104 and Isla sobbed in the ER waiting room, clutching her baby like a soldier guarding a war wound. She wrote another when Eli didn't speak until age 3, and again when he finally did, whispering, Mama, like it was the only word he needed. She documented Noah's nightmares, Grace's allergies, their laughter, their milestones, their pain. She wrote them all down because no one else was watching. No one else remembered, except her. The shoebox was labeled in thick black marker. Truth. At night, after the kids were down and the dishes were stacked haphazardly in the sink, Isla would open her laptop, not to write, but to search. Adrian Cole. She typed it like a prayer, like a curse. Google returned pages of hits. There he was, smiling on Forbes' under 30 to watch list. There he was again, boarding a yacht in Mykonos with a Swedish supermodel. TechCrunch called him the face of innovation. Vogue called him charismatic. CNBC called him fearless. She called him ghost. He hadn't changed his name. He hadn't hidden. In fact, he seemed to glow brighter with each year. And that made it worse, because it meant he could have found her. He could have cared. He simply chose not to. Isla clipped every article, printed every interview. Photos of him at launches, on stages, holding awards with that same polished smile. She pasted them into a black binder and labeled it Public Image. A small yellow post-it on the front read, Lies always need witnesses. Truth only needs evidence. She didn't show the binder to anyone, not even her children. They were too young to know who he was. Too young to understand why their mother occasionally stared out the window for hours with clenched fists and a hollow gaze. Once, when the twins were 4, Ava asked, Why don't we have a daddy like the cartoons? Isla froze mid-laundry. Her breath hitched. She crouched beside Ava and said, Some families have mommies and daddies. Some have only one. But we always have each other. Ava blinked, then nodded. Okay. But Isla knew that wouldn't be the last time she'd ask. She began writing the letters differently after that. Less pleading. Less pain. More truth. Dear Adrian, I will not beg for your attention. You missed Grace's dance recital. She wore a red bow and smiled so big her cheeks hurt. You would have been proud. You should have been. But I won't teach her to chase ghosts. The anger came in waves. Sometimes it scorched her, white hot and blinding. Other times, it simmered quietly beneath everything. Like an old bruise no one could see but still throbbed when touched. It wasn't just that he left at it, was that he never looked back. He never once asked. Not even a whisper. Not even an anonymous letter. That kind of silence was cruelty wrapped in politeness. And so, Isla made a promise to herself. She would raise them strong. She would raise them kind. And if the day ever came when Adrian Cole dared show his face, she would not hide the years. She would hand them to him, piece by piece. Like receipts. One night, exhausted after folding 3 loads of laundry and soothing Noah's night terrors, Isla sat down with a new letter in her hand. But she didn't write this one. It was already written, 6 pages long, dated 2 years earlier. It began. Dear Adrian, do you ever wonder what their voices sound like? She read it over and over, the ink slightly smudged from where tears had once fallen. Then, with a breath she didn't know she was holding, she lit a match and burned it. Watched the flame eat the edges, curl the corners, turn all that pain into ash. Some truths didn't need to be shared. Some were meant to be released. The next morning, she was up before the kids, sweeping the living room in silence. The sun filtered in through the cracked blinds. She moved like someone who had memorized the weight of sacrifice. The doorbell rang. It startled her. Packages were rare. When she opened it, there was a magazine on the mat, rolled tight, wrapped in plastic. She picked it up, unwrapped it. Business Elite. Adrian Cole is getting married. The cover showed him with a woman who looked like she belonged on the arm of a prince. Blonde, tall, perfect. The headline, the man who has everything. Isla stared at it. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply walked inside, laid the magazine on the table, and opened her binder. She clipped the article, added it to the file, then opened her notebook, tore out a fresh page. Dear Adrian, she wrote, I hope your fiancé knows how to explain your absence to 4 curious children, because one day they will ask. And unlike you, I won't lie. She folded it, dated it, placed it in the shoebox. Then she stood up, wiped her hands on her jeans, and went to pack the kids' lunches. Because the world doesn't stop for heartbreak, and neither did she. The photo found her before she went looking for it. Isla was sitting on the couch, one arm cradling Grace as she napped, the other scrolling through a quiet moment on her phone. It was rare, peace, silence. The kind of pause mothers treasured like gold. And then it appeared in the middle of her feed. A repost. An engagement announcement. Adrian Cole and Vivian Prescott. She blinked once. Twice. But it didn't vanish. They stood in front of a yacht, his hand on her waist, her hand extended to display the diamond. Not a ring, but a constellation. The caption read, Power meets legacy. She said yes. Hashtag Cole Prescott, hashtag NextGen Royalty. Her stomach twisted, not from heartbreak, from rage. Vivian was the daughter of Justice Caroline Prescott, the youngest woman ever appointed to the Supreme Court. A legal dynasty. Adrian hadn't just moved on. He'd strategized. He wasn't building a family, he was consolidating power. Isla zoomed in on the ring, not because she cared, but because it gleamed like a crown. Like a slap, Grace stirred in her lap. Isla gently kissed her daughter's curls. You don't know what he's taken from you, she whispered. She spent the next hour spiraling, clicking through the tagged photos. The engagement party, the guest list, the soft launch of their upcoming joint foundation, focused on ethical tech and future families. Future families. The irony tasted like rust in her mouth. She didn't cry. That had dried up years ago. But something splintered deeper. Not grief. Not pain. Certainty he would never come back. Not for her. Not for the kids. Not even out of guilt. He had rewritten the past so thoroughly that even his engagement speech mentioned starting fresh. He was erasing them with velvet words and white teeth. That night, Isla didn't write another letter. She pulled out the box instead, all the unsent pages, the photos, the milestones, the ultrasound. She picked the 4 clearest pictures, one of each child on their last birthday. She chose the group photo too, the one Ava had taken with the self-timer, all of them crammed on the couch, wild hair and peanut butter smiles. She put them in an envelope with one letter. Just one. No poetry. No plea. Only this. They are yours. You know it. Do the right thing. She didn't sign it. She didn't need to. She addressed it to his corporate office. Certified mail. Tracked. Days passed. Then a week. No reply. The tracking said, delivered. Still, nothing. She checked her inbox obsessively. Her phone. The mail. But silence is its own answer. Isla sat on the porch with a mug of tea she wouldn't drink. The kids were inside watching cartoons, their laughter muffled. The sun was setting behind the roofline. The street was still. She stared at nothing and whispered, "He doesn't care." And for the first time, those words didn't feel like a wound. They felt like evidence. Because silence is louder when you've handed someone everything they need to speak, and they still choose not to. That night, she made another decision. She opened her laptop, typed paternity law attorneys, high-profile cases, scrolled past the ads, landed on a name she remembered from the news, Mara Ellison. She was the one who'd taken down that hedge fund billionaire in the infamous Hidden Family case. Isla clicked. The contact form was sterile and intimidating, but Isla filled it out with the same calm she'd once used to cut umbilical cords alone. Subject line: paternity case against Adrian Cole. She wrote, "I'm the mother of his children. He's pretending we don't exist. I have documentation, photos, DNA. I'm not seeking money. I'm seeking truth." She hit send. Then she folded the shoebox shut. She didn't burn it. She didn't throw it away. She just set it aside. Because the time for letters was over. The time for lawyers had begun. There are moments when grief softens. This wasn't one of them. Isla sat on the floor of her bedroom, surrounded by paper. Notebooks, folders, manila envelopes, appointment slips, discharge summaries, birth certificates, some crisp, some water-stained, some nearly torn in half from years of moving, folding, hiding. Point 4 names, point 4 weights she had carried alone. She started sorting. Ava, born first, 2 minutes before midnight. Her delivery note still had Isla's dried blood on the corner. Eli, blue at birth, but breathing. NICU records stapled to his chart. Noah, the quietest baby, the loudest toddler. Grace, a full head of black hair and lungs that could shake a building. Isla labeled everything. She cross-referenced dates. She pulled out a worn Ziploc bag. Inside, for cotton swabs sealed and labeled .DNA samples. The tests hadn't been easy. Isla remembered how Ava squirmed, how Eli cried, how she nearly vomited from guilt at having to take cells from inside their cheeks for something that felt like proof they should have never needed. But the tests had come back clear. Adrian Cole. Biological father. She had all 4 reports. Legal. Verified. Time-stamped. She stacked them in a folder. Labeled it in capital letters. Paternity. Verified. Then she exhaled, shaky and slow, because now she had evidence. And evidence doesn't beg. The law firm's office smelled like old wood and victory. Everything was glass, leather, and silence. The kind of place where people came to win, not to cry. Isla adjusted the collar of her thrift store blazer and followed the assistant down the long hallway. Her sneakers squeaked. Mara Ellison was smaller than she appeared on TV, petite. Gray suit. Eyes like blades. "Ms. Morgan," she said, shaking Isla's hand. "Have a seat. I've read your submission." Isla Saturday and I took the case. Isla blinked. Just like that. Mara shrugged. He's a high-profile tech CEO engaged to the daughter of a sitting Supreme Court judge. You have DNA. For kids. If even half of what you're alleging is true, this will detonate. I'm not doing it for attention, Isla said quickly. I don't want money. Then why are you doing it? Isla opened her folder, slid 4 photographs across the table, one of each child. I'm doing it for them. Mara looked at the photos for a long moment, then nodded once. We'll start with a court order and serve him publicly. Publicly? You want to get a response from a man like Adrian Cole? Mara said, folding her hands. You don't knock on the back door. You bang on the front gate. Adrian was mid-sentence when it happened at a press conference for his new AI division. Flashing lights, branded banners, shareholders in every row. His fiancée, Vivian, sat stage right, nodding with tight-lipped approval as Adrian spoke about innovation and ethical futures. And so our responsibility is not just to build technology, but to protect the families it touches. Click. Flash. Applause. Then Mr. Cole. A woman in a black suit stepped onto the stage, a white envelope in hand. You've been served. Adrian blinked. Cameras turned out a hush. He hesitated, then took the envelope with a confused half-smile. Who? The woman turned and exited. Vivian leaned in. What is it? Adrian opened the envelope. Inside, court summons. Paternity claim. For DNA results. Photos of 4 children. His hand dropped. The smile evaporated. Reporters began shouting questions. Vivian stood. We're done here. Adrian muttered something. No one heard what, but Isla did, because she was watching the live stream. From her living room, the kids were outside, playing hopscotch on the cracked driveway. She sat on the couch, laptop open, watching the precise moment Adrian Cole's carefully curated world cracked. She didn't smile. She didn't move. She just whispered, "You know them now." The headlines came fast. Adrian Cole served in secret. Paternity suit during AI launch. Who are the 4 children? Uncovering the mystery mother, Cole and Prescott. Engagement on hold. Isla's inbox exploded. Journalists, bloggers, podcasters. She ignored them all, but Adrian didn't. His lawyer released a statement. Mr. Cole has no recollection of the relationship in question. Allegations are unsubstantiated. We will respond. Legally in due course. No recollection. Isla reread those words a dozen times. Her hand shook. He hadn't just denied the children. He had denied her very existence. Ava saw the headline over Isla's shoulder. "Mom, what's that?" Isla closed the screen. "Nothing, baby. Just some old news." But Ava frowned. "That man looks like me." Isla's breath caught. She wrapped her arms around her daughter. "He should. You're his." Ava paused. "Does he know that?" Isla kissed the top of her head. "He knows now." Mara was furious. "We gave him the chance to respond quietly. This is a slap." "I expected it," Isla said. "He thinks he can outmoney the truth. We'll file a motion to force deposition. And we're requesting temporary acknowledgement of paternity under California law." What does that mean? It means, until he proves otherwise, he's the father. And that changes everything: custody, support, image. Isla nodded slowly. But the truth was, this wasn't about money or time. It was about names and silence. And what happens when you tell the world, "I exist, and so do they?" The kids were asleep when Isla finally sat down that night. The noise of the day had died. She opened her shoebox again, took out the very first letter. "Dear Adrian," it began. "I don't know if I'll ever send this, but I need you to know they're real. We're real." And you walked away. She stared at it for a long time. Then she placed it, gently, into the fireplace, lit a match, watched it burn. Because now he had received something. And next time, it would be in court. The first time Isla saw her name trending, she dropped her phone. Hashtag Isla Morgan, hashtag Adrian Cole exposed, hashtag 4 kids later. Her inbox had become a war zone. Praise, hate, sympathy, threats, all stacked into colorful rows of digital noise. "You're a queen. I believe you. Gold-digging whore. Stay strong for your babies. Maybe close your legs next time." She shut the laptop, leaned back in her kitchen chair, and stared at the ceiling. Outside the window, Ava and Eli played hopscotch. Noah was drawing with chalk. Grace sat cross-legged with a juice box. For now, they didn't know. For now, they still had a bubble. But Isla could feel it. The pop was coming. The first reporter showed up 2 days later. Slick smile. Soft voice. Microphone hidden in a bouquet of flowers. "I'm not doing interviews," Isla said, blocking the door. "We just want your side, Ms. Morgan." "You already decided my side," she replied, and shut the door in his face. The school called the next morning. "Ms. Morgan," the principal said gently, "Ava was asked today if her father's a criminal." Some parents are confused. Isla's stomach twisted. Confused about what? "Well, the children's photos are online now. And some tabloids are." "She's 7. Isla cut in. "Tell your staff to shut it down. We're doing our best. But the students, I'll move them if I have to," Isla said. "I don't care what district lines say. My kids will not be put on trial with me." After she hung up, Isla walked into the living room and found Ava sitting quietly on the floor, holding one of the articles Isla thought she had hidden. "He doesn't look mean," Ava said. Isla knelt in front of her. "Sweetheart, some people don't look like what they are." Ava blinked. "Does he still not want us?" Isla hesitated. "He's confused. But I'm not. I've always wanted you." Meanwhile, Adrian's camp was bleeding. Tabloids printed sanitized statements. Mr. Cole was unaware of the situation and is cooperating with authorities to resolve the confusion. Behind the scenes, it was chaos. Vivian hadn't been seen in public in 3 days. Her family released a cool-toned statement affirming no comment. Engagement rumors shifted to whispers of postponement. Inside his mansion, Adrian screamed at his publicist. "Why are we still losing the narrative?" He shouted, "Because it's not just the story, Adrian. It's the image. You were the golden boy. Now you're the ghost father. She's manipulating the press. She hasn't said a word to the press." Adrian's jaw locked. She's winning because she's silent. But Isla wasn't silent in court. She filed an injunction to block Adrian's legal team from accessing private pediatric records without consent. She submitted photos, voice notes, therapist logs. She moved with quiet fury. Mara, her lawyer, smiled grimly. "He wants this to disappear. But the internet doesn't forget. And neither do mothers." That night, Isla received a message .no subject. Line.no sender name. Just a PDF. She clicked .it was an internal email. Company letterhead. Time-stamped 3 weeks before the paternity suit was served. From Adrian Cole to legal director subject. Termination options. If this woman becomes a liability, I want to explore every legal option to silence or discredit her before the IPO window closes. Pay her off, drag her, dig up dirt, just end it. The kids are not to be acknowledged under any circumstance. Isla's hands trembled as she read it again. And again, and again, her eyes blurred. Her throat tightened. This wasn't about denial anymore. This was warfare. She forwarded the email to Mara. And then, she leaked it.no press release. No commentary, just the raw file. Posted anonymously on a subreddit. Shared with 3 journalists she trusted. One of them confirmed the metadata. Within 48 hours, it hit the front page of every major platform. Leaked email shows Adrian Cole ordered silence over paternity case. Discredit her before IPO. Suddenly, the tide turned. Public sympathy morphed into fury. Former employees began speaking out. An ex-assistant described a boys' club culture where Adrian bragged about never paying child support to anyone. Vivian's engagement ring vanished from her Instagram page. Mothers across the country tweeted, "We believe Isla." Hashtag my kids are not liabilities. Shame has an NDA. Truth doesn't. Adrian released another statement. The email was taken out of context. Isla didn't respond because the email spoke louder than any interview. And for once, she didn't have to shout to be heard. But it wasn't over. Ava came home with a drawing point for kids. A mom. And a big red X over a man's stick figure. Face. Isla crouched beside her. "What's this, honey?" "That's Daddy," Ava said simply. But then someone at recess said, "He doesn't want us." So I crossed him out. Isla's heart cracked clean in half. She reached out slowly. "Sweetie, you don't have to cross him out." "But he did," Ava whispered. That night, Isla sat alone in the dark, no laptop. No files. No letters. Just silence. She thought of that first moment, holding each baby, whispering promises they were too small to understand. She thought of how many lies could be told with polished teeth and corporate lawyers. And she thought of the truth. Ava, Eli, Noah, Grace. They didn't need vindication. They needed protection. And this time, the world was finally listening. The courtroom felt like it had been built to swallow voices. Dark wood panels, high ceilings, cold air conditioning that crept under collars like a warning. Every breath Isla took echoed too loud. Every heartbeat ticked like a metronome of consequence. Rows were filled. Reporters scribbled. Cameras weren't allowed, but the world outside would still see everything. The gallery buzzed with whispers. That's her. The mother. The one with the 4 kids. The one who stood up to him. Adrian Cole sat across the aisle, flanked by a team of attorneys in identical Navy suits. His face was unreadable. His fingers tapped against the table like he was waiting for an elevator, not a judgment. He hadn't looked at Isla once. The judge adjusted her glasses. "Ms. Morgan, you may proceed with your statement." Isla rose. Her heels clicked softly on the polished floor as she made her way to the witness box. Mara nodded from the table, calm but sharp-eyed. Isla placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. Then she sat. And for the first time in 6 years, she spoke her story out loud, to the world. "I met Adrian Cole 6 years ago at a tech conference. I was a freelance journalist. He was magnetic. He was funny, intelligent, and kind. At least, he was kind when it mattered. A pause. Breath. We dated for 3 months. It was real. He knew I was pregnant when he left. She glanced at him. Still no eye contact. Not only did he leave, he erased me. Changed numbers. Disconnected emails. Removed mutual friends. I went to every hospital appointment alone. I gave birth alone. For babies. Gasps from the gallery. Someone audibly whispered, "For, yes, quadruplets. No family support. No financial help. I worked nights after they were born. I pumped breast milk between shifts. I slept in 1-hour intervals. I taught them to walk while folding laundry." Her voice didn't crack. It sharpened. I kept records. I sent him letters. I hired a lawyer when I realized the truth wasn't enough, that I would have to fight to be heard. Isla leaned forward, steady. "I'm not here for pity. And I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because 4 children were denied the basic right to know where they came from." She turned to the judge. "Ava, Eli, Noah, and Grace are real. They are not shadows. They are not liabilities. They are not to be forgotten." She stopped speaking. Silence followed, not from awkwardness, but from impact. The judge nodded slowly. "Thank you, Ms. Morgan." Isla stepped down, walked back to her seat. Mara reached out and gave her hand the lightest squeeze. And then, "Your Honor," Mara said, rising. "With the court's permission, Ava Morgan would like to make a brief statement." There was a pause. Adrian finally turned, brows slightly furrowed. "She's only 7, his lawyer said. "This feels inappropriate." The judge raised a hand. "She has been cleared by the child psychologist and accompanied by her mother. I'll allow it, with discretion." Isla turned. Ava stood near the back, hands clasped, wearing a soft yellow dress and gripping a piece of paper. She looked impossibly small in the room full of adults, but her eyes didn't waver. Isla walked to her, knelt. "You sure?" Ava nodded. "I want to." Isla took her hand and led her to the front. As they reached the stand, Ava whispered, "Do I have to sit alone?" "No," the judge said gently. "You can hold your mom's hand." Ava stepped up. Isla stood beside her. The judge smiled softly. "Hi, Ava. What would you like to say today?" Ava unfolded the paper. "My name is Ava Morgan. I am 7 years old. I have a brother named Eli and another named Noah. And I have a sister named Grace. We are quadruplets, which means we all came together." She cleared her throat. "We love our mom. She makes lunch every day. She reads stories even when she's tired. She always knows who's crying, even if we don't talk. She tells us we are brave. She tells us we are enough." A soft sniffle came from somewhere in the back row. Ava looked up, eyes meeting Adrian's. Her little fingers tightened around Isla's. She said our dad might be scared, that maybe he got confused. So I waited. A beat, but he never came. A hush swept the room. Isla looked down at her daughter, eyes bright, chin trembling, back straight. "I don't need a new dad," Ava said quietly. "I just wanted the one we had to show up." The judge's mouth twitched, not quite emotion, not quite neutrality. Ava folded the paper and stepped down as Isla walked her back to her seat. Her legs trembled, not from nerves, but from awe. She didn't raise victims. She raised witnesses. Adrian's attorney leaned in, whispering urgently. He waved him off. Still, Adrian never spoke. Not to Isla, not to Ava, not to the court. He just sat there, and for the first time since Isla met him, he looked small, not powerful, not untouchable, just small. Adrian Cole's fall didn't come with sirens. It came in quiet, calculated exits. First, the investors. Within a week of Ava's testimony, 3 major backers pulled out of Synapse AI's Series D funding round. Stockholders panicked. Overnight, shares dropped 16%. Then came the board. A private memo was leaked, an internal demand for Adrian to step aside until legal matters are resolved. The language was polished. The meaning wasn't. Then came Vivian. A single sentence in a press release. The engagement between Ms. Prescott and Mr. Cole has been formally dissolved. No emotion, no photos, just silence. The empire wasn't burning. It was evaporating. Isla watched it all unfold from the kitchen counter, a cold cup of tea beside her, laptop open. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. This wasn't justice yet, just gravity. "Mom," Eli called from the other room. "Can I have more crackers?" "Top shelf," she called back. eyes still fixed on the screen. A headline flashed. NDAs and secrets. Former Cole employees speak out. She clicked. Stories poured out. Assistants silenced with hush money. Engineers pressured to falsify performance numbers. One former girlfriend who claimed Adrian paid her to disappear after a pregnancy scare. He hadn't just buried her, he'd made a career of it. The call came from the school 2 days later. Ms. Morgan, the secretary said, careful, measured. We had an unexpected visitor this morning. Isla's spine stiffened. Who? Mr. Adrian Cole. He signed in at the front office. Claimed he wanted to drop off supplies for Ava's classroom. Her heart stopped. What? He didn't speak to the children. He left a bag of notebooks. He was polite, but our resource officer flagged it. Given the ongoing court situation, is there footage? Yes. I'm coming now. The footage was short. Adrian entered through the front gate wearing a neutral blazer, a forced smile, and carrying a gift bag with a child's cartoon character on it. One Isla knew Ava had outgrown years ago. He handed it to the receptionist. Waited. Looked down the hallway that led toward the kindergarten classrooms. For a second, he stepped forward, paused, then turned back and walked out. He never saw the kids, but Isla saw everything, his posture, his eyes scanning the hall, his hesitation, and most of all, his calculation. This wasn't fatherly. It was PR. That night, Isla sat on her bed in silence, arms wrapped around her knees, the shoebox of evidence at her feet. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She felt something colder than both. Resolve. She opened her laptop, logged into the custody case portal, uploaded a new motion. Emergency petition for supervised visitation only. She attached the footage. She added a note. If he wants to be in their lives, he can start with boundaries, not performance. Then she dialed Mara. I want full custody, she said. Permanent. No loopholes. Mara's voice was crisp. I'll draw up the motion. You'll need character witnesses. I'll give you 4. The next morning, Isla sat on the porch while the kids played. Grace was finger painting a rainbow. Across the sidewalk, Ava chased Bubbles. Noah and Eli took turns being the dragon. The air smelled like soap and dirt. Mom? Ava said, walking over. Why did he come to school? Isla looked up. She could lie. Or she could rewrite the truth. He wanted to be seen, she said. But not for the right reasons. Ava frowned. Is he going to take us away? No one's taking you anywhere, Isla said softly, pulling her daughter close. You are not something to be claimed. You're someone to be loved. Ava leaned in. You won't let him, right? Isla kissed her temple. I already didn't. Later that evening, Isla stood at the kitchen window, watching the sun sink into the rooftops. She whispered to herself, this was never about punishing him. It wasn't about courtrooms or headlines or money. It was about undoing the silence. It was about making sure her children didn't grow up believing they were optional. It was about healing what Adrian tried to break and building something louder, stronger, and unshakably theirs. The rain started sometime after dawn, soft and unbothered, like it had nothing to prove. Isla watched it through the window of her lawyer's office, a mug of untouched tea cradled in her hands. The courthouse loomed in the distance, gray and indifferent, as if it had seen 1,000 stories like hers and wasn't interested in how this one ended. But she was. Today mattered. Not for the headlines. Not even for her. For them. She could hear Ava's voice in her head. He never came. And today, he would have to. The courtroom was silent. The kind of silence that wraps itself around your lungs and makes it hard to breathe. People filled every row. Journalists, legal aides, even a few quiet onlookers who had followed the story like it was a series to binge. Adrian sat across the aisle in a charcoal suit, tailored perfectly. His hair was neatly trimmed, but his eyes had dimmed. His hands, once expressive and confident, now rested stiffly on the desk. A man no longer in control of the narrative, just a subject in someone else's. Isla didn't look at him. She looked at the judge, at her lawyer, at the rows of people watching. But most of all, she thought of her children. Not here, not in this room. Grace was home building Lego castles. Noah and Eli were playing dinosaur trivia. Ava was coloring. Their worlds still innocent, still soft. She would keep them that way. Even now, the judge cleared her throat. We've reviewed all filings, exhibits, and testimony. The paternity of Mr. Adrian Cole has been conclusively established via DNA evidence, acknowledged under California statute, and supported by testimony from Ms. Isla Morgan and associated medical records. She looked up. Accordingly, the court rules the following. Isla exhaled, slow. Mr. Cole is recognized as the legal father of Ava, Eli, Noah, and Grace Morgan. A hush. Mr. Cole shall provide ongoing financial support as per statutory requirements. However, given the petitioner's formal waiver of all monetary compensation, Adrian turned sharply toward Isla. The judge continued, unfazed. The court recognizes Ms. Morgan's request to decline child support. This court respects that decision. A ripple of confusion moved through the room. She's declining money, someone whispered. The judge raised her hand. Furthermore, the court grants Ms. Morgan full legal and physical custody of all 4 children. Mr. Cole shall have no unsupervised visitation rights. Supervised visitation may be considered in the future, at the court's discretion and upon the children's request, when they are of appropriate age. She looked directly at Adrian now. Until then, any contact must go through a state-appointed liaison. A pause. Then, finally, this case is resolved. The gavel fell like a door slamming shut. Isla closed her eyes for a moment. Not to see or why to breathe that it was done. People began murmuring. Reporters rushed for exits. But Adrian remained seated, staring at the floor, as if expecting the ground to fall away beneath him. Isla stood to leave, but paused when he rose. Wait, Adrian said. Everyone froze. He took a step toward her. Please, just give me a minute. Mara moved forward. You can speak through counsel. Isla raised a hand. It's fine. Adrian looked at her. Not the courtroom version of her. The woman. The memory. The silence he'd buried. I was scared, he said. Her eyes didn't flinch. So was I? I still showed up. He swallowed. I thought it was just a fling. I didn't expect to get consequences, she finished. I didn't know how to fix it. You didn't try. He looked down. I see them now, he said. I saw Ava's testimony. And the footage from the school. I didn't know what to say. You had 5 chances, she said softly. You chose none. The courtroom had gone still again. I'm sorry, Adrian whispered Isla. Not at once. Then be invisible. Let them grow up without needing to forgive you. He blinked. That's the best apology you can give. Then she walked past him, her heels clicking gently on the polished floor, her head high. Someone in. The gallery clapped. That it was soft. Just one person, but others followed, quiet, respectful, like an acknowledgement. Not a victory of truth. Outside the courthouse, the rain had stopped. The sky cracked open just enough to let the sun glance through. Not bold, not triumphant. Just present. Mara stepped beside Isla as they waited for the car. You could have taken millions, she said. You had every right. I didn't want to pay out, Isla replied. I wanted protection. Money doesn't raise children. Presence does. And absence teaches them more than anything. Mara studied her. You did something people with power rarely do. What's that? You told the truth without letting it make you bitter. Isla looked down the street. No, she said. I was bitter. I just didn't let it raise my children. That night, Isla tucked them all in, one by one as she lingered with Ava, brushing the hair back from her face as she drifted off. Mom? Ava whispered, barely awake. Yes, baby. Did the judge tell him we're real? Isla's throat tightened. She kissed her daughter's forehead. Yes, she said. And now the world knows too. Ava smiled softly. Good. The ribbon was soft, gold, and trembling in the wind. Isla stood in front of the freshly painted sign, the Grace House, a small, 2-story building with wide windows and warm brick, nestled at the corner of a quiet neighborhood. A place that hadn't existed a year ago. A place that shouldn't have had to, but it did. Behind her, volunteers held coffee. Board members chatted. Someone adjusted the donation banner. But Isla just stood still, her fingers wrapped around the ceremonial scissors, heart ticking slowly inside her chest. This wasn't about celebration. That it was about reclamation. This building had once been a foreclosure, abandoned, left to rot. And now it would hold mothers like her. Women who had been erased, silenced, left behind by men with power and polished statements. Women who showed up anyway. Mothers who didn't quit. She cut the ribbon. The crowd clapped. But her eyes only searched for one thing, for children laughing. Across the lawn, Ava raced Eli toward the swings. Noah tried to untangle the kite string from a tree. Grace, in her mismatched socks and butterfly shirt, skipped barefoot through the grass. Twirling, they were loud, wild, unafraid. Free.it was the sound of a future not borrowed from anyone. Later that evening, when the last cupcake had been eaten and the last hand had been shaken, Isla sat on the office floor of Grace's house with her shoes off and her back against the wall. Her bones ached, but her chest felt light. The walls smelled like new paint and vanilla candles. She closed her eyes. 6 years ago, she'd labored on a stained hospital cot without a birth plan, without a partner, without even a full name for one of the babies. She had bled into the silence and survived it. Now, the silence was hers, not a void, but a choice. Mom? Ava's voice came gently from the doorway. Isla opened her eyes. Can I come in? Of course. Ava tiptoed in and curled beside her like she used to when she was smaller. I like it here, Ava said, head resting on Isla's shoulder. I built it for girls like you, Isla whispered. Girls who are told they're too loud or too soft, too complicated or too much. Places like this say, you're enough, exactly as you are. Ava was quiet for a long time. Then, softly, I was looking for paper in your drawer. Isla stilled, and I found something. A pause, a journal page. Isla's breath caught. Ava sat up slightly. It said there was a fifth. Silence filled the room again, but this time, not heavy, just full. Isla didn't look away. Yes. Ava's eyes searched her mother's face. I was pregnant, Isla said slowly. Before I knew I had four. Just a few weeks. I hadn't even heard the heartbeat yet. I was still figuring out what to do. She swallowed. And then one night, I collapsed in the rain. No one came. I bled through a bath towel. And by morning, it was gone. Ava didn't speak. She just reached forward and hugged her mother tightly, head tucked into the space between Isla's chin and collarbone. Isla closed her eyes again. I don't know if it was a boy or girl, she whispered. I only know it would have had your smile. Ava didn't cry. She didn't ask more. She just held her tighter. Isla ran a hand through her daughter's hair and rested her cheek against her crown. Some people call it a miscarriage, she murmured. But to me, it was a goodbye I wasn't ready for. A long silence passed. Then Ava whispered, maybe they're watching us. Isla nodded. Maybe they're the reason I built this place. That night, after the children were tucked in, Noah, snoring with his feet off the bed, Eli curled with a stuffed dinosaur, Grace sleeping diagonally on the mattress. Isla walked into her bedroom and opened her top drawer. She pulled out the journal page. There was a fifth pregnancy. I lost it. In the storm, alone. She stared at the handwriting. Faded. Tilted. Then she folded it carefully, pressed it into the back of a photo frame, and slid it behind a picture of all four kids laughing at the beach. Sand stuck to their cheeks. Grace's pigtails crooked. Noah mid-sneeze. Eli cross-eyed for the camera. Ava's grin wide and fearless. She whispered, you're here too. She turned off the light, let the darkness wrap around her like a blanket, not a shadow. A week later, a young woman arrived at Grace's house. 19. Pregnant, wearing someone else's clothes. She sat across from Isla at the intake table, head down. They said you'd understand, the girl mumbled. I didn't know where else to go. Isla leaned forward gently. You're here now, she said. And here, we believe you. Some stories don't end in fire. Some don't end in revenge. Some end with rain, with memory, with a girl finding a page in a drawer and saying nothing, only holding tighter. Some stories end with children who laugh without fear and mothers who stop apologizing for surviving.